June 13, 1944.
Normandie, France.
The Battle of Villers-Bocage. The air in Normandy didn't smell like the sea. It smelled of diesel, unwashed bodies, and the sickly sweet scent of rotting cows bloated in the summer sun. Inside the hull of Tiger 007, the air was worse. It was a cocktail of sweat, cordite, and fear. Michael Whitman, the man the British press would come to call the Black Baron, stood in the commander's cupola. He wasn't screaming orders. He wasn't panicking. He was perfectly, terrifyingly still. Through his binoculars, he watched the road below Hill 213. It was a suicide scenario. Below him, stretched out like a lazy snake, was the British 7th Armored Division, the legendary Desert Rats. They were the heroes of North Africa. They had beaten Rommel, and now they were parked on the road to Cannes, engines off, brewing tea. They were confident. They thought the war was already won. Whitman looked at his own force. It was pathetic. He had 5 Tiger tanks left serviceable. 5. Against an entire armored brigade. "They are stopping," his gunner, Balthasar Bobby Wall, said over the intercom. The voice was tinny, distorted by the static of the throat microphone. "Why are they stopping?" "Arrogance," Whitman replied softly. He dropped down into the turret. The steel hatch clanged shut above him, sealing out the sunlight. The interior of the Tiger I was cramped, a claustrophobic box of machinery designed to kill. It was dark, lit only by the dim glow of the instrument panels and the slivers of light coming through the vision slits. "Driver," Whitman said, "start engine. Slow. Keep the RPMs low. I don't want them to hear the beast waking up." The massive Maybach HL230 engine coughed, then roared to life. The floor plates vibrated. The Tiger didn't just feel like a vehicle. It felt like a living thing. 57 tons of hardened German steel. An 88mm KWK-36 gun that could punch a hole through a house from 2 kilometers away. But today, the range wouldn't be 2 kilometers. It would be point blank. "We are going alone?" the loader asked, his voice shaking slightly. He was young. They were all young. "The others will cover the hill," Whitman lied. He knew the other Tigers were not in position yet. But he couldn't wait. If the British realized their mistake, they would secure the high ground. He had to hit them now. "Driver, advance. Target the lead vehicle on the road. High explosive." The Tiger lurched forward. The tracks chewed up the soft Norman earth, crushing the hedgerows. They moved out of the tree line and onto the parallel dirt track. Down on the main road, the British soldiers were relaxing. Some had their shirts off. A few were smoking cigarettes, leaning against their Cromwell tanks. They heard a rumble, a deep, mechanical growl. Some looked up, shielding their eyes from the sun. They didn't see a tank. They saw a monster breaking through the bushes. "Contact! Front!" someone screamed. "Too late. Fire!" Whitman whispered. Boom! The 88mm gun recoiled with the force of a train collision. Inside the turret, the noise was deafening. The breech block slammed back, ejecting the smoking brass casing of the shell. It hit the floor with a heavy clung. Down on the road, the lead British half-track vanished in a ball of orange fire. The explosion was so violent it flipped the vehicle onto its side, blocking the road completely. "Load AP. Armor piercing," Whitman ordered. "Target the Cromwell to the rear. Trap them." The loader slammed a fresh shell into the breech. "Up! Fire!" The second shot screamed out. It hit the last tank in the column. The Cromwell's turret popped off like a champagne cork. Now the British column was trapped. The vehicle at the front was burning. The vehicle at the back was burning. And in the middle, sitting like ducks in a shooting gallery, were dozens of tanks, trucks, and half-tracks. "Driver! Full speed," Whitman commanded. "Drive down the line. We walk beside them." This was insanity. Tank doctrine states you stay at range. You use your optics. You do not drive parallel to an enemy column, exposing your flank at a distance of 50 meters. But Whitman wasn't fighting a tactical battle. He was conducting a massacre. The Tiger roared onto the road. It was a wolf among sheep. The British crews were scrambling to get back into their tanks. Engines were stalling. Men were running. Target left. Firefly. Take it out. Whitman barked. The Sherman Firefly was the only British tank with a gun powerful enough to penetrate the Tiger's frontal armor. It was the priority target. The British gunner was frantically spinning his turret, trying to track the massive German tank thundering past them. Whitman was faster. The 88mm barked again. The shell tore through the Firefly's hull. The ammunition inside cooked off instantly. A jet of white-hot flame erupted from the commander's hatch, turning the tank into a blast furnace. Next, the Cromwell. Fire! Bam! The Cromwell exploded. Next, the Bren carrier. Machine gun. The bow machine gunner opened up, spraying tracer fire into the soft-skinned vehicles. Trucks carrying fuel and ammunition went up in chains of secondary explosions. The road to Villers-Bocage became a tunnel of fire. Inside the Tiger, the heat was rising. The ventilation fans whirred, struggling to suck out the propellant fumes. The loader was sweating profusely, his chest heaving as he lifted the heavy shells. Driver, keep moving. Don't stop. If they stopped, the British infantry would swarm them with PIAT anti-tank launchers. They had to keep moving. They had to be a moving shark. A shell pinged off the Tiger's side armor. Clang. It sounded like a sledgehammer hitting a bell. The crew flinched. Ricochet, Whitman noted calmly. Small caliber. Ignore it. Gunner, traverse right. Target the Stuart light tank. Identified. Fire. The Stuart was a light reconnaissance tank. The 88mm shell didn't just penetrate it. It practically disintegrated it. The force of the impact lifted the small tank off the ground. Whitman looked through his vision blocks. He was counting. For tanks. 5, 6 half-tracks. 2 anti-tank guns. He was dismantling an entire regiment vehicle by vehicle in the span of 5 minutes. But as they rolled into the town of Villers-Bocage itself, the dynamic changed. The open road was gone. Now they were in the narrow streets of a French village. Stone walls. Blind corners. Shadows. This was a tanker's nightmare. In the city, your long-range gun is useless. Your armor means nothing if they drop a grenade down your hatch. Eyes open, Whitman hissed. Left and right. The Tiger crushed the cobblestones, its tracks squealing against the pavement. The smoke from the burning column behind them drifted into the town, creating a gray fog. Suddenly, a British Cromwell tank reversed out of a side alley, right in front of them. It was so close Whitman could see the terror in the British commander's eyes. The Cromwell's gun was pointing the wrong way. Ram them, Whitman yelled. Ram them? The driver asked, shocked. No time to reload. Ram them. The driver floored the accelerator. The 57-ton Tiger surged forward. It collided with the 27-ton Cromwell with the sound of a car crash magnified by 1,000. Metal screamed. The lighter British tank was shoved sideways, its tracks grinding uselessly against the asphalt. The Tiger climbed up onto the Cromwell's engine deck, crushing the rear hull under its massive weight. Back up, Whitman ordered. Gunner, finish it. The Tiger reversed, gears grinding. As soon as the barrel cleared, Bobby Will fired. The Cromwell vanished in smoke. Whitman checked his watch. 15 minutes. He had destroyed 14 tanks and 15 transport vehicles in 15 minutes. We are out of ammo, the loader croaked. Only 3 he shells left. No armor piercing. Whitman looked around the smoking ruins of the street. The town was silent now, except for the crackle of flames. He had single-handedly blunted the British advance. He had bought the German army another day, but he had pressed his luck too far. Turn around, Whitman said. We go back to the hill. Reload and refuel. Sir, the driver said, his voice panicked. Track tension is gone. The collision. We threw a track. The Tiger groaned. The engine revved, but the tank pulled violently to the left. They were immobilized, a sitting duck in the middle of a burning town. And now the British were recovering from the shock. Whitman could hear them, the shouting, the sound of boots on pavement. the metallic click-clack of anti-tank guns being wheeled into position. Whitman took off his headset. He looked at his crew. Their faces were black with soot, their eyes wide white circles of adrenaline. "Abandoned tank," he said calmly. "We walk from here." "Walk?" the gunner asked. "Through the British lines?" Whitman grabbed his MP-40 submachine gun and checked the magazine. He popped the hatch open. The smell of burning rubber and roasted meat flooded into the turret. "We are tank aces," Whitman said, climbing out into the smoke. "But today we are infantry. Move. Fast." They jumped off the steel hull of their dying beast. The Tiger 007 sat silent, a conqueror defeated not by an enemy gun, but by its own mechanical failure. Whitman looked back at his tank one last time. He patted the cold steel of the barrel. "Goodbye," he whispered. Then he turned to his men. 7 kilometers to our lines. Do not stop. Do not engage. If you see a British soldier, you kill him with a knife. Silence is our armor now." They ran into the hedgerows just as the first British shell slammed into the empty Tiger. The Battle of Villers-Bocage was over. The legend of the Black Baron had begun. But the war was far from done. And the next time Whitman climbed into a Tiger, the Allies wouldn't be drinking tea. They would be waiting. August 8, 1944. Near Synthos, Normandy. 56 days after Villers-Bocage. The hero's welcome was short. After the destruction of the British column at Villers-Bocage, Michael Whitman was paraded through Germany. He was summoned to the Wolf's Lair. Adolf Hitler personally pinned the swords to his Knight's Cross. He was offered a desk job, an instructor position at the tank school in Paderborn. "You are a national treasure," the generals told him. "We cannot risk you." Whitman looked at them with hollow eyes. He had seen the sky over Normandy. It was black with Allied planes. He had seen the roads choked with burning German convoys. "I will not become a museum piece while my men are burning," Whitman replied. He returned to the front. But the front had changed. In June, the Germans still had hope. By August, they were fighting for survival. The Allies had broken out of the beachheads. The Americans were sweeping south. The British and Canadians were hammering from the north. The Falaise Pocket was forming, a cauldron that would trap 50,000 German soldiers. Whitman was given a new command. Not his old crew. Not his old company. He was patching together a ragtag force of leftover Tigers to stop Operation Totalize, a massive Allied armored push south of Cannes. 8 o'clock hours. The Gompsnil wheat fields. "It's a shooting gallery," his new gunner muttered. Whitman stood in the cupola of Tiger 007. It wasn't his original tank. He had commandeered it from a battalion commander. He looked out at the terrain. It was flat, terrifyingly flat. To his left and right, 4 other Tigers rumbled forward. They were crossing open wheat fields, exposing their flanks to the hedgerows and woodlands near the village of Saint-Aignan-de-Cramesnil. "We have no infantry support?" the driver asked. "None," Whitman said. "Just us." It was a suicide run. The doctrine of the Tiger tank required infantry to protect the sides and air support to clear the skies. Today, they had neither. The sky belonged to the Jabos, the Allied Typhoon fighter bombers that dived like hawks, firing rockets that could crack a tank like an egg. Whitman buttoned up the hatch. "Keep your eyes on the tree line to the right," he ordered. "The Canadians and British are in there. I can feel them." 8:15 hours. The tree line, 800 meters away, hidden in the shadows of an apple orchard. Trooper Joe Ekins adjusted the traversing wheel of his Sherman Firefly. Ekins was a shoemaker from Northamptonshire. He wasn't a tank ace. He had never destroyed a tank in his life. He was just a gunner in the 1st Northamptonshire Yeomanry. But he had the weapon. The Sherman Firefly looked like a standard American tank, but the British had hacked it. They had cut a hole in the back of the turret to fit a massive 17-pounder anti-tank gun. It was an awkward, unbalanced machine, but the gun was a beast. It fired a solid tungsten slug that could punch through the Tiger's frontal armor at 1,000 yards. "Target front." The British commander, Sergeant Gordon, whispered. "Tigers. 3 of them." moving across the open. Ekins looked through his periscope. He saw the monsters. They looked like moving fortresses, floating on a sea of golden wheat. Range? Ekins asked. 800 yards. Wait, Gordon said. Let them get closer. If we miss, they will spot our muzzle flash and wipe us out. The British crew held their breath. They knew the reputation of the Tiger. If that 88mm gun turned toward them, they were dead. A Sherman's armor was paper compared to a Tiger. One hit and they would burn. 825 hours. The trap springs. Inside Tiger 007, Whitman felt a sudden spike of anxiety. The field was too quiet. Load he told the loader. Put a shell into that tree line, just in case. He never gave the order to fire. From the orchard, a flash of light erupted. Crack thump. The sound of a high-velocity gun. To Whitman's right, the Tiger commanded by Untersturmführer Willy Irian shuddered. A 17-pounder shell had slammed into its track. The tank spun violently, digging a furrow in the earth, and ground to a halt. Smoke began to pour from the engine deck. Contact right, Whitman screamed. Traverse right. Drehzoklok. The massive turret of Tiger 007 began to rotate. But the Tiger was heavy. The hydraulic traverse was slow. It took precious seconds for the long 88mm barrel to swing around. Whiz, a shell screamed past Whitman's turret, missing by inches. The air pressure from the passing round made his ears pop. Where is it coming from? The gunner yelled. I can't see the flash. The British were using a new type of powder that reduced smoke. They were invisible assassins. Keep moving, Whitman ordered.
Zet IG zag.
Don't present a flat target. But 57 tons of steel does not zigzag. The Tiger lumbered forward, its engine roaring in protest. In the orchard, Joe Ekins was sweating. The casing from his first shot clattered to the floor. Reload. Sabo. Up. Target the leader, Sergeant Gordon ordered. The one in the middle. He's turning toward us. Ekins peered through the sight. The crosshairs settled on the side of the hull of Tiger 007. He led the target slightly. Firing now. 8:29 hours. The end of an era. Time seemed to slow down inside Tiger 007. Whitman was looking through his commander's cupola periscope. He saw the tree line. He saw the faint disturbance in the leaves where the muzzle blast had occurred. There, he shouted. Firefly. Range 700. Fire at W. He never finished the sentence. The 17-pounder tungsten shell hit the Tiger. It didn't hit the thick frontal armor. It hit the side, right between the road wheels and the upper hull. Punched through the steel plate as if it were cardboard. The shell didn't explode immediately. It traveled through the interior of the tank. It severed hydraulic lines, spraying hot oil everywhere. It smashed into the ammunition rack on the other side of the hull. Inside the Tiger, there were 80 rounds of 88mm high-explosive ammunition. The spark from the impact ignited the propellant charges. Boom! The explosion wasn't just a fire. It was a volcanic event. The pressure inside the hull spiked to thousands of atmospheres in a millisecond. The welds holding the 10-ton turret to the hull failed. The entire turret, with Whitman, his gunner, and his loader inside, was blown straight up into the air. It flipped over, a massive chunk of burning steel flying like a tossed coin, and crashed upside down into the wheat field 10 meters away. The hull continued to roll forward for a few feet, a headless metal corpse spewing a column of fire 100 feet high. 8:30 hours. Silence returned to the field. In the British Firefly, Joe Ekins pulled back from his sight. He was shaking. Did we get him? Sergeant Gordon looked through his binoculars. The turret is gone, Joe. It's blown clean off. Nobody survived that. They didn't know who they had just killed. They thought it was just another tank. Just another anonymous Nazi crew. They didn't know they had just ended the career of the most famous tanker in history. Out in the field, the fire burned. The wheat caught fire, creating a ring of black ash around the wreckage. There were no bodies to bury. The heat of the ammunition fire had been so intense that it had cremated the crew instantly. Michael Whitman, the Black Baron, the man who had destroyed 138 tanks and 132 anti-tank guns, had vanished into smoke. The German radio net went chaotic. Tiger 007. Report. Tiger 007. Come in. Static. This is Leader 2. 007 is gone. I repeat, 007 has detonated. No survivors. The news traveled up the chain of command faster than the retreat order. It reached the divisional HQ within the hour. It reached Berlin by nightfall. The propaganda ministry panicked. They couldn't tell the German people that Whitman was dead. He was the symbol of invincibility. If the Baron could die, then the war was truly lost. So they did what they always did. They lied. They reported he was missing in action. They said he had disappeared into the fog of war, perhaps fighting on foot, perhaps leading a ghost unit behind enemy lines. But in the muddy field in Normandy, the rain began to fall on the overturned turret of Tiger 007. The steel cooled, hissing in the wet grass. The war moved on. The tracks of thousands of Allied tanks rolled past the wreckage, pushing toward Paris, toward the Rhine, toward Berlin. Whitman was left behind, a rusted marker in a foreign field. But the mystery didn't end with the explosion. In fact, the argument over who really killed Michael Whitman would spark a feud that lasted for 70 years. Was it Joe Ekins? Was it the Canadians? Was it a Typhoon rocket? The body lay undiscovered for decades. The legend grew, but the truth was buried under 2 feet of French soil, until a man with a metal detector walked into the field in 1983. 1944 to 1983. The field at Gomsnil. For 39 years, the field was just a field. Farmers plowed the earth. Cows grazed on the grass. The wheat grew tall every summer and was harvested every autumn. The locals knew the history. They knew that in August 1944, the earth here had shaken with the fury of giants, but the physical scars had healed. The craters were filled in. The rusted hulks of the Shermans and Tigers were dragged away to scrap yards, melted down to build cars and bridges for a new Europe. But there was a ghost in the field. Officially, Michael Whitman was missing in action. The Nazi propaganda machine, even as it collapsed in 1945, refused to admit he was dead. They spun wild tales. He had lost his memory. He was fighting in a secret unit. He had escaped to Argentina. Even after the war, the mystery persisted. Without a body, there was no closure. Whitman became a phantom, a dark legend of the Panzerwaffe. March 1983. The discovery. Jean-Paul Palade, a French historian, stood on the side of the N158 highway. He held a black-and-white photograph from 1944. It was a reconnaissance photo taken by a German soldier shortly after the battle. It showed the overturned turret of Tiger 007 lying in the grass. Palade looked at the photo, then at the landscape. He lined up the trees. He lined up the curve of the road. It was here, he pointed. Not in the village. Here. In this ditch. He had petitioned the German War Graves Commission to dig. The road was being widened, and if they didn't look now, the site would be paved over with asphalt forever. The excavation team brought in a small mechanical digger. The operator worked gently, peeling back layers of French soil like the pages of a book. 1 foot down, shrapnel. Rusted casings. 2 feet down, a boot. The work stopped. The men jumped into the pit with trowels and brushes. They found them. They were not the Knights of the Reich. They were a jumble of bones, mixed together in a shallow, hasty grave. Local villagers had buried them quickly in August 1944 to prevent disease, marking the spot with a wooden cross that had rotted away decades ago. There were 5 skeletons. Among the bones, they found the artifacts of a dead empire. A rusted pistol, a belt buckle with the motto "Mein Ehre heißt true," "My honor is loyalty," and finally the definitive proof, a dental plate. The forensic team compared the jawbone to the 1944 dental records of the SS Leibstandard Division. It was a perfect match. Michael Whitman had been found. He wasn't in Argentina. He wasn't a secret agent. He was a pile of bones in a roadside ditch, lying next to his driver, his gunner, his loader, and his radio operator. In death, The Baron was no different than the thousands of unknown infantrymen who littered the continent. The ballistics verdict, who killed him? With the discovery of the crash site and the analysis of the wreck photos, the historians could finally piece together the final seconds of Tiger 007. For years, the Royal Air Force claimed the kill. They said a Typhoon rocket had blown the tank apart. But the forensics proved them wrong. Rockets strike from above, penetrating the thin deck armor. Whitman's tank had no rocket damage. Then the Canadians, the Sherbrooke Fusiliers, claimed they fired the shot from a concealed position 150 meters away. Their claim was strong. They were close. They had the angle. But the geometry pointed to the apple orchard, to the Firefly of the Northamptonshire Yeomanry, to the shoemaker Joe Ekins. The trajectory of the shell that blew the turret off had entered the Tiger's engine compartment from the rear right quarter. It passed through the intake, severed the fuel lines, and detonated the ammo rack. It was the golden shot. The irony was staggering. Michael Whitman, the greatest tank ace of World War II, a man who lived for war, who breathed tactics and steel, was killed by a volunteer who didn't want to be there. Joe Ekins fired 3 shots that day. He destroyed 3 Tigers. And then, later that afternoon, his own tank was hit. Ekins bailed out, survived, and was reassigned as a radio operator. He never fired a tank gun again. He went back to England. He married. He had children. He made shoes. He lived a quiet, peaceful life until he died in 2012. He rarely spoke of the war. When told he had killed the Black Baron, Ekins simply shrugged. He was in a tank. I was in a tank. I saw him first. That's all there is to it. Lockham German War Cemetery. Today, Michael Whitman lies in Block 47, Row 3, Grave 120 of the Lockham German War Cemetery in Normandy. It is a somber place. Unlike the American cemetery at Omaha Beach, with its white marble crosses shining in the sun and manicured green lawns, the German cemetery is dark. The crosses are made of rough, black volcanic stone. The trees are oak and maple, casting deep shadows. Feels heavy, sorrowful. There is no statue of a tiger tank. There are no swords, just a small, flat square stone in the grass. It reads, Michael Whitman SS Stuff, 22 for 14 August 8, 44. And below his name, the names of his crew, Heinrich Reimers, Karl Wagner, Rudolf Herschel, Balthasar Wall. Though Wall actually survived the battle in a hospital and died later, the grave commemorates the crew as a unit. Visitors come. Some are neo-Nazis who leave flowers and candles, worshipping the hero. Some are tank enthusiasts respecting the skill. Some are historians. But most are just silence. Scene end. Narrator, voice-over/conclusion. The story of the Black Baron is not a story about glory. Nazi propaganda tried to turn him into a god of war. They painted him as invincible, a Teutonic knight in shining armor. But armor is just steel, and steel melts. Whitman destroyed 138 tanks. He killed hundreds of men. He was a master of his craft. But in the end, the war didn't care how many medals he wore around his neck. In the chaotic wheat fields of 1944, skill was trumped by volume. The Allies didn't send a better ace to duel him. They sent 1,000 anonymous Shermans. They sent shoemakers and farmers and factory workers. The Black Baron died not in a blaze of cinematic glory, but in a sudden, blinding flash of chemistry and physics. He didn't even have time to say goodbye. The tiger is gone. The empire he fought for is gone. All that remains is a name on a stone, and the wind blowing through the trees of Normandy. The end.